Let me do a small demo to show you what the API endpoints look like. So this is our app. These are the code we have for our fast API. So let me run this file right now. When you run the file, you get to a link which is the root endpoint. So this root endpoint has a message that says, "Welcome to the ETA prediction API. This API provides endpoints for predicting ETA based on trip data." So this is the root endpoint, and this root endpoint was gotten used using a get endpoint, right? So this get endpoint basically gets data from the server, and the data is this one, which is displayed right here. One of the things I love about Fast API, obviously Fast API is fast, but Fast API also gives you automatic documentation for your API. When I say automatic documentation, I mean the docs. So if we go to this link and type /docs, it will take us to the automatic documentation, which is a visual representation of our API that we have been. All right, so you have the root endpoint here, and then we have two post endpoints. So post endpoints are used to put information into the server, right? So what this does, it puts in all this information about each trip. These are the variables in our data set. So let me try it out. Whenever you try out this and you execute it, it will give you a prediction. Let's see. All right, so it says predicted ETA is 104 points, so and so, right? And then you have another get endpoint for multiple trips. So how this one works is that it will take in two or more or as many as possible trip data as possible. So let's say for example, I've now added another entry with the same variables. This one has realistic variables, you can see 281 and so on. So these are this information for trip 1, this information for trip 2. Now if I execute this, I will get two predictions. When we execute that, it will give us two predictions. So back to the code. So we created a class called trip, and each trip has different variables, right? So using the base model, the pedantic base model, we're able to easily do the data validation for this. That is, we're easily able to make sure that each variable is a float or is an integer, right? So whenever you are typing in the variables into the server, it will basically be able to do that data validation. So if this is not an integer, it will raise an error. If this is not a float, it will raise an error. Now moving on to the uh, endpoint itself. So we have the root endpoint. So the root endpoint is uses the get method to retrieve this and display it. So that's what it does. It retrieves this information and then it displays it. While the post endpoint, these two post endpoints, one is to what do you call it? Is to put data into the server. So you put in the trip data or you put in multiple trip data, and then you get your prediction for the ETA and then get your ETA prediction. So we could have also used the get method here as well. The get endpoint, instead of us putting data, it should have made a request. It would have asked us to input all these variables, so they would still have worked the same. So if we had used the get endpoint, we would have still been able to make it work. So that's just the basic rundown of what goes on in here. And then of course we the model load the model and the scaler, and then we have the predict function which does the scaling, encoding, and the returns the prediction. Thanks for tuning in. That's it for today. I hope this video was helpful.